Good morning, I am Dr. Yasmin, and today we are going to start our first lecture for module auditing 1. This is going to be our book. It's going to contain all the material for our course. Our course content is going to be in 5 chapters. In first chapter, we are going to introduce what is the meaning of auditing and other assurance services provided by auditors, as we are going to know what is the meaning or what is the audit objective. In chapter 2, we are going to describe the role of certified public accounting (CPA) and emphasize the regulation and control of CPA firms through the ethical standards and the legal responsibilities of auditors. In chapter 3, we are going to deal with auditors and management responsibilities towards internal audit and internal control, also fraud and errors. In chapter 4, we are going to study various aspects of audit planning in depth, summarize and integrates audit planning and audit evidence. And finally, in chapter 5, we are going to discuss audit reports. Audit report is the final product of audit process. So in chapter 5, we are going to provide a detailed discussion of audit reports. This is our course content. So let's start with our first chapter, chapter 1, an overview of auditing. Chapter 1, an overview of auditing. We are going to discuss this chapter in English, and also we are going to translate in Arabic for those who speaking Arabic. So let's start with the first part of our chapter, an overview of auditing, definition of audit. If we discuss about the audit word, is derived from the Latin word audire, which means to hear. كلمة auditing هي كلمة في الأصل كلمة لاتينية معناها to hear أو to listen، نحن نسمع. Okay? Auditing don't have a significant definition. المراجعة ملهاش تعريف محدد، لكن احنا we accept the following definition. احنا هنقبل التعريف الجاي because it's a general definition. General definitions meaning it's accepted for all types of auditing. Okay? So what is the meaning of auditing? Auditing is the accumulation and evaluation of evidence about information, determine and report on the degree of correspondence between the information and established criteria. Auditing should be done by a competent independent person. So this is the accepted definition for auditing, and we accepted this definition because it includes several keywords and phrases for understanding or for the easing of understanding the auditing. Okay, and also its general definition because it's acceptable for all the types of auditing. يبقى احنا ما عندناش we don't have specific definition for audit. احنا ما عندناش تعريف واحد ومحدد للاوديت، بس احنا بنقبل التعريف اللي احنا هنقوله دلوقتي، لان التعريف ده مفروض ان هو general definition بيتقبل، ممكن accepted for all the types of auditing، ممكن اقبله لاي نوع من انواع الاوديت، واحنا هناخد ال types of audit within the lecture. كمان الديفينيشن ده فيه several keys بيعرفني the importance of audit، وبيعرفني ازاي الاوديت can be processed او audit process can be done. Okay, so this is accepted definition of auditing. Let's discuss this audit, or let's discuss this definition and discuss the keywords and the key phrases in this definition. First of all, this definition says that the auditing is the accumulation and evaluation of evidence about information to determine and report on the degree of correspondence between the information and established criteria. So the first phrase or the first keyword in this definition is information and established criteria. Okay, what is the meaning of information and established criteria? Meaning, to do an audit, there must be information in variable form and some standards criteria, okay, by which the auditor can be evaluate and the information. يبقى احنا بنقول ان to have an audit you have to have an information in a way you are accepted, in a way that you are going to accept, in a way that verifications for. Okay, and also there are some standards the auditor have to follow. These standards can as the auditor is going to be follow can evaluate the information. يبقى احنا بنقول ان عشان الاوديتنج تتعمل او الاوديت process should be done يبقى لازم يكون عندي verifications information، عندي معلومات موثقة، also عندي some standards، عندي معايير وكرايتيريا لازم الاوديتور يمشي عليها. اوكي طيب ايه الكرايتيريا او المعايير اللي لازم الاوديتور يمشي عليها؟ which criteria or which standards the audit should be followed. First of all لازم اول معيار او اول criteria is the gap meaning generally accepted accounting principles. The auditor should be sure that the financial information should be done or should be accomplished by following the generally accepted accounting principles, or should be used international financial reporting standards IFRS. Okay, this means that the auditor should be determine whether the financial statement of an institution have been prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, okay, and should be accepting or should be followed or should be prepared according with IFRS International Financial Reporting Standards. يبقى احنا عندنا هنا الاوديتور عشان يبقى متأكد او يبقى عشان يشوف المعلومات اللي عندي المفروض ان هو يفولو some criteria or some standards. الكرايتيريا والستاندرز دول معناهم ان هو اول حاجة لازم يتأكد ان الفاينانشال انفورميشن والفاينانشال ستيتمنتس تم اعدادها او should be prepared without او according with GAAP and IFRS. GAAP اللي هي مبادئ المحاسبيه المقبوله قبول عام generally accepted accounting principles and ال IFRS اللي هي معايير التقارير الدوليه. اوكي طيب so the auditor should be sure about these information or should be sure about these criteria. Also some of the criteria could be the regulations within the company or the company or the audit or the country regulations. Some of criteria is going to be the country regulations or the country laws. For example, when the auditor is going to audit the tax returns. The tax returns اللي هي عوائد الضرائب او يشوف الاقرارات الضريبيه. عشان يشوف الاقرارات الضريبيه he need to see the criteria. Here is going to be the tax law. المفروض يكون الكرايتيريا اللي هيستخدمها هنا المرة دي هتكون التاكس law. So I have so many as an auditor criteria I should follow. I should be sure that the financial statement is prepared according to these criteria. For example, generally accepted audit accounting principles, IFRS, and some, for example, regulation and laws like the tax law. Okay, so this is the first keyword or this is the first phrase. Second, accumulation and evidence, accumulating evidence and evaluating evidence. Okay, if we say it, what is the backbone for the auditing process is the evidence. الايفيدنس هي العمود الفقري او هي الحاجه المهمه جدا في عمليه المراجعه. اوكي طب what is the meaning of evidence؟ ايه هو معلومه او معنى كلمه evidence؟ Evidence is any information used by the auditor to determine whether the information being audited is stated in according with the established criteria. احنا قلنا ايه هي established criteria. We mentioned before what is the meaning of the established criteria. Established criteria rules and regulations and standards should be followed when preparing financial statements. So evidence is any information, any kind of information you should be accumulated, you should be gathered as an auditor to be sure that information being audited is according with the established criteria. What kind of information? Like electronic or documentary data about transactions, written and electronic communication with outsider, observations by auditor, oral testimony of the auditee, of the client. Okay, in chapter 4 we are going to discuss in depth, we are going to discuss in more details what is the meaning of evidence and what is the type of evidence. But here we should know that evidence is the backbone of audit process. Without evidence, the auditor can't be sure that the financial statement is correct, that the الانفو الموجودة عنده في القوائم المالية is correct information، لأن أنا I don't have what is supported this information and what is supported this information is the evidence. The third phrase in this definition is the auditing should be done by competent and independent person. مفروض التعريف او الجزء الثالث عندي في الديفينيشن ان احنا مفروض اللي بيعمل عمليه المراجعه لازم يكون شخص competent and independency. معنى ذلك ان the auditor must be qualified to understand the criteria used and must be competent to know the types and amount of evidence to accumulate to reach the proper conclusion about after examining the evidence. يبقى الauditor لازم يكون عندي qualified enough، لازم يكون مؤهل، لازم يكون عنده knowledge و competency عشان يعرف ايه حجم evidence المفروض يجمعها. He should have competency to know what kind of evidence he should accumulate and what amount of evidence he needs. He should be competent, he should be independency, he have judgment and experience to accumulate evidence. Why he accumulate evidence and why he should evaluation the evidence to give the proper conclusion, to give me the correct opinion about the financial statements. Okay, this is what is the meaning of competency and the independency person. We are going to discuss in more details the competency and the independency in auditing through chapter 2. اوكي، يبقى احنا هنشوف بشكل اوضح، احنا بس ندي هنت على الكومبتنسي والاندبندنسي في الشابتر ده. في شابتر 2 ان شاء الله هندسكس in more depth with more details ان ازاي الاوديتور يكون qualified. In chapter 2 we're going to discuss in depth how auditor should be qualified by education, by more training, and how he going to be competency and how he can keep his independency in track. ازاي يحافظ على الاندبندنسي بتاعته. The final part of the definition discussing the reporting stage or the final stage of the audit process. The final stage of the audit process is preparing the audit report. The audit report it communicates the findings to the users. يبقى آخر مرحلة أو آخر جزء في التعريف من الأوديتنج هو إن إحنا بنعرف الفاينل ستيج أو نتكلم على الفاينل ستيج. الفاينل ستيج of audit is reporting أو إن إحنا بنجيب ندي الاوديت ريبورت او ان احنا بنعمل بريبيرنج الاوديت ريبورت. الاوديت ريبورت الهدف منه الاساسي ان انا الفايندينجز as an auditor الفايندينجز that I found as an auditor communicates to the users. What kind of users؟ يبقى انا مفروض ان انا اخر مرحله في الاوديتنج واللي دي موجوده في التعريف هو الاوديت ريبورت، ان انا ببعت الفايندينجز بتاعتي او بوصل الفايندينجز بتاعتي لليوزرز، اي kind of users any kind of users. internal users, external users, any kind of users, any kind of stakeholders. اوكي، اي حد ليه اهتمام بالانستتيوشن بتاعتي او بالكومباني بتاعتي انا بديله الريبورت ده. اوكي، we are going to discuss in more depth in more details audit report in chapter 5. هنتكلم بشكل اوضح عن الاوديت ريبورت في chapter 5، بس قدامنا ده this is the form of the standard audit report. ده شكل الاوديت ريبورت عندي او الستاندرد اوديت ريبورت. اوكي، in chapter 5 we are going to discuss the types of audit report and the content of audit report. في chapter 5 هنتكلم على الاوديت ريبورت وايه مكونات وانواع تقرير المراجع. Okay, so this is the definitions of the audit. Or this is the accepted definitions of the audit and this is the keywords of this definition. This figure is summarize how we can do an financial statements or audit of financial statements. First of all, I'm an accounting. This accounting maintain accounting records and prepare financial statements. I need to be sure or to make an assessment that this financial statement and this accounting records is preparing according with the establishing criteria. We say the establishing criteria could be GAAP, could be IFRS. So I am as an independent auditor making assessment, make sure that financial statements is preparing according with generally accepted accounting principles. So I have to accumulate evidence, I have to evaluate this evidence, and I have to make an necessary adjustment, propose an necessary adjustment. After I make this necessary adjustment, this financial statements going to be audited financial statements. After I make this auditing financial statements, I issue a report on findings. I should give a report of findings, and this report is going to the users. So this is the summarized of the financial statements, audit of financial statements. الشكل ده بيلخص عمليه المراجعه القوائم الماليه. اول حاجه as an accounting انا بعد القوائم preparing الفاينانشال statements. طيب انا عايز اتاكد ان these financial statements are preparing according with generally accepted accounting principles. So it's come to the role of the auditor. ده دور المراجع. المراجع هيعمل ايه؟ He's going to accumulate evidence, gather evidence and making an evaluation for this evidence. هيبدأ يجمع أدلة، وبعد ما يجمع الأدلة الإيفيدنس هيبدأ يتأكد إن الأدلة دي سليمة. أوكي، بعد كده يقدم necessary adjustment. هيبقى طالب adjustments معينة للأرقام اللي ممكن يكون فيها some problems or some mistakes. He making an adjustment for the some problems or some mistakes or some errors in the financial statements. بعد ما نحقق أو بعد ما we making this as after we making this as adjustments as a company. Okay, the following the financial statements العادية عندي هتبقى audited financial statements. So audited financial meaning it's preparing with criteria. After I have the auditing financial statement, بعد ما يكون عندي auditing financial statements, it's time to give my report. It's time to give my opinion as an auditor. وقت ان انا ادي رأيي كمراجع. رأيي كمراجع او as an auditor هيروح لمين؟ هيروح للusers و any kind of users. خلاص، يبقى انا auditor report is going to give or going to communicate to the users. Okay, about the auditor findings. ده ملخص عملية المراجعة. This is a summarize of audit of financial statements. Now we are going to discuss type of audits. Audits are often viewed as falling into three major categories: operational, compliance and financial audits. يبقى أنا عندي أنواع الأوديت غالبا بنشوف إنها بتبقى موجودة في 3 categories أو 3 main categories: الoperational والcompliance والfinancial statements. خلاص، operational audits, compliance audits and financial audits. Okay, we are going to discuss every type of audit in more details the following slides. First type of audit is operational audit. أول نوع هندرسه هو operational audit. What is the meaning of operational audit? Operational audit is a study of a specific unit of an organization for the purpose of measuring its performance. يبقى أنا operational audit okay is specific to measure the performance of type of organization or department of the organization. يبقى operational audit الغرض منها ان انا بدرس جزء او قطاع من المؤسسة عشان اقيم اداؤه. For example, I need to evaluate computerized payroll system for efficiency and effectiveness. عايز اعمل عملية تقييم لنظام المحاسبة او نظام البيرول اللي هو الكمبيوترايزد الالكتروني عشان نشوف الافشنسي والeffectiveness. What kind of information as an auditor I should accumulate to evaluate computerized payroll system? Okay, I should accumulate number of records processed, cost of the department and number of errors. So what kind of established criteria for evaluate computerized payroll system should be company standards for efficiency and effectiveness in payroll department. The available evidence, error reports, payroll records and payroll processing costs. يبقى انا لو عايز اعمل evaluating للcomputerized payroll system عشان اتاكد من الefficiency والeffectiveness. What is the difference between efficiency and effectiveness? Efficiency meaning the relationship between the input and output, but effectiveness to achieve the goal. So I need to see if the computerized payroll system is achieving my goal and which kind of resources it's used. Is there an efficiency in using the resources? Okay. So what kind of information I should have or what kind of information is going to be available for the auditor? ايه هي المعلومات اللي هتكون محددة للauditor؟ هتكون number of records processed والcost of the department والnumber of errors. Okay, which established criteria the audit should follow to find out if this information is correct or not? He should follow or he should compare the information he gathered with the company standards for efficiency and effectiveness in payroll department. So available evidence available for the auditor is going to be error reports, payroll records and payroll reprocessing costs. يبقى لو هنعمل evaluating الكمبيوترايز system اول حاجه الاوديتور لازم يحدد the auditor should be gather 3 more types of information. اول حاجه هيجمع الانفورميشن اللي هتكون available بالنسبه له او الانفورميشن المفروض تكون متاحه اللي هي number of record process والcost of the department والnumber of errors. طيب الكرايتيريا اللي هو هيقارن بيها عشان يبقى متأكد ان الانفورميشن دي is a good information or the acceptable information. يبقى هيبقى ال company standards for efficiency and effectiveness in payroll department. طب ال evidence بقى ال available evidence اللي هيعملها comparing بال established criteria to be sure that the information is following the established criteria هيبقى ال error reports وال payroll records وال pay processing costs. This is the first type of the auditing is operation audit. Okay? Second type of audit is complaints audit. What is the meaning of complaints audit? The performance of complaints audit is dependent upon the existence of verifiable data and of recognized criteria or standards such as established laws and regulation or an organization policies and procedures. This means that the complaints audit is focusing on to be sure that the company is following the laws, regulation and policies and procedures. So complaints audit is related to the laws regulation. For example, if I want to determine whether bank requirements for loan continuation have been met. لو أنا عايزة أتأكد as a bank أو عايزة أتأكد that the company is following the bank or the loan requirements from a bank. طيب what kind of information should be available? What kind of information should be available to determine whether bank requirements for loan continuation have been met? يبقى الانفورميشن اللي المفروض تكون متاحه بالنسبه لي is going to be company records. يبقى الانفورميشن so the information to be available is going to be company records. Okay. To be sure that this information is correct information, what kind of established criteria I should be compared with? The established criteria here is going to be loan agreement. It's going to be loan agreement. So انا محتاجه ان انا اتاكد ان انا فعلا مستمرة على قواعد منح القروض، فبالتالي الانفورميشن اللي تبقى متوفرة بالنسبة لي هي الكومباني ريكوردز. هبدأ أشوف هقارنها باللون اجريمنت أو باتفاقيات القروض. طيب الافيلابل ايفيدنس بقى what kind of available evidence. الافيلابل evidence هنا عشان البنك يتأكد ان احنا فعلا في اهتمام و the bank to be sure that its requirements going to be followed is going to be financial statements and calculations by the auditor. يبقى الأوديتور هنا using complaints audit is going to be sure that the company is following the bank requirements for loan. Okay, by evidence, what kind of evidence should be the bank or what kind of should be available is going to be financial statements and calculation by the auditors. What kind of information should be available to be compared with the established criteria is going to be company records. Okay, and the established criteria is going to be loan agreement. يبقى الكومبلينز اوديت وده تاني types of audit. الغرض منها الأساسي أو البيربوس الأساسي منها is going to be sure that the regulations, rules, procedures and policies followed. Okay, أنا بجمع for example we give an example for to be sure that we are going to accept or going to follow the bank requirement for giving the loans should be sure that I have available information in company records. Available information should be compared with the loan agreement, and the available evidence for the auditor is going to be financial statement and the calculation by the auditor. Okay, this is the second type. First type and second type it's going to be or it's some kind of new types of audits, but the main type of audit, the type that all the users needed is the third type is the financial audit. النوع الاولاني اللي هو اوبريشنال اوديت والنوع الثاني اللي هو الكومبلينس اوديت احنا بنتعامل معاهم كانها انواع حديثه نسبيا appeared or needed by the evaluation of the organization needs. بدات تتخلق او بدات نحتاجها نتيجه التغيرات اللي بتحصل في المنشآت او في الشركات. لكن النوع الثالث هو ده البيسك type of audit. ده هو النوع الاساسي للاوديت اللي هو the first type is the basic type of audit. Sorry, the third type is the basic type of audit is financial audit, financial statements audit. What is the meaning of financial statements audit? Financial statements audit is an audit of the financial accounting information of the entity. An audit of financial statements covers the balance sheet and the related statements of income, returned earnings and cash flows. Okay, the goal of financial statements or the goal of audit of historical financial statements is to determine whether these statements have been prepared according with the generally accepted accounting principles. Financial statements are normally performed by firms of certified public accounts. However, internal auditors often perform financial audits of departments or business segments. Users of auditors reports include management, investors, bankers, creditors, financial analysts, and government agencies. يبقى audit of historical financial statements هي مراجعة أو the audit of accounting information للfinancial statements. What kind of financial statements do we have? We have four main types of financial statements. We have cash balance sheet, income statements, earnings, and cash flows. These are four main types of financial statements. So the audit of historical financial statements focusing on determine whether this information in these four types of statements are prepared according with generally accepted accounting principles. For example, for historic audit of historical financial statements is annual audits of Benjamin's is some kind of type of organization's financial statements. So what kind of information should be available is Benjamin's financial statements. Benjamin's is the title of the organization, or the name of the organization. So if I need to, as an auditor, to audit the Benjamin's financial statements, what kind of criteria I should be compared with is going to be generally accepted accounting principles. And what kind of evidence should be accumulated and evaluated as an auditor should be documents, records, and outside sources of evidence. And in chapters 4, we are going to discuss what kind of outside sources evidence which should accumulate as an auditors. ولو أنا عايز أعمل auditing of historical financial statements or financial audits لازم على سبيل المثال إن أنا عايز أراجع حسابات شركة بينجوينز أو الفاينانشال ستيتمنت بتاع شركة بينجوين. يبقى ايه الانفورميشن اللي هتبقى available للاوديتورز اللي هو المفروض هيبص عليها or should be showed for the auditors هتبقى الفاينانشال statement for this entity or for this organization. طيب ايه هي الاستابليش كرايتيريا اللي احنا هنقارن بيها الانفورميشن الافيلبل بالنسبه لي؟ هتبقى الجنرالي accepted accounting principles. طب ايه الايفيدنس should be accumulated and evaluated؟ هتبقى عندي الدوكيومنتس records and outside source of evidence. الجورنال entries، الليدجر، الترايل بالانس، الادجستد ترايل بالانس and any kind of records and sources. So this is the three types of auditing: operational audit, complaints audit, and financial statements audit or financial audit. Operational audit to be sure the we have effectiveness and efficiency in our operations. So to making an assessment of any department in organization performance. Complaints audit is regardless are we following the laws, regulation, policies, and procedures. Historical cost or audit of financial statements or financial audits is caring about the audit of the financial information of an entity. Okay, so let's move to the third type of our lecture, and third part of our lecture is discussing audit objectives. Objectives of an audit. We have main objectives and we have sub-objectives that we are going to follow to get or to achieve the main objectives. The main objectives of audit is to express an opinion. Okay, so the auditor, the final stage of the auditing is reporting, express an opinion. What kind of opinion? Express an opinion whether the overall financial statements, okay, the information being verified, are prepared in all material respects in according with identified financial reporting framework. يبقى أنا عندي main objective للأوديتنج وعندي sub objective فروض أو أهداف فرعية بستخدمها عشان أوصل في الآخر للهدف الرئيسي. طيب يبقى إذا عندي هنا the main objective هنا إن أنا express an opinion. إحنا قلنا آخر مرحلة من مراحل الأوديتنج is reporting. من مرحلة الأوديت is reporting. reporting هنا فيها اللي هو express an opinion. express an opinion عن إيه؟ express an opinion whether overall financial statements. Overall financial statements, what kind of statements I have? Income statements, statement of financial position, statement of cash flow, footnotes. اوكي دول الثري تايبس بلس الفوتنوتس. انا عايزه اتاكد ان all these financial statements or overall financial statements are preparing in according with identified financial reporting framework. اوكي الفريم ورك ده هو ايه؟ الفريم ورك ده عندي اللي هو generally accepted accounting principles. اوكي الفريم ورك عندي اللي هو international financial reporting standards اللي هو issued by international accounting standards board. اوكي كل دول هم عندي فريم ورك. يبقى The main objective of an audit of financial statements is to enable the auditor to express an opinion on whether the overall financial statements. What kind of overall financial statements? The financial statements most often included are the statement of financial position, what we call balance sheet, income statements, and statement of cash flow, including footnotes, are prepared in all material respects in accordance with an identified financial reporting framework. This framework normally can be defined as generally accepted accounting principles or should be the International Financial Reporting Standard issued by the International Accounting Standards Board. These also can be considered for this purpose. Okay, this is the main objective. Okay. So to achieve the main goals, and the main goals to express an opinion whether the financial statements are following the established criteria or are prepared in accordance with the established criteria, we have four basic aims. We have other four basic aims. First of all, to evaluate whether the financial statements and accompanying footnotes are in accordance with specific criteria. And we say the specific criteria is generally accepted accounting principles and IFRS. Also, to evaluate the effectiveness of internal control system over financial statements. Okay, the second aim or the second objective is to evaluate the effectiveness of internal control system. Number 3 is to evaluate the possibility of fraud occurring within the organization. And the fourth objective is to evaluate the likelihood that the organization will contain as going concern. So we have one main objective, and to express an opinion, to make sure that auditor express an opinion, and to achieve this main objective, we have four basic aims. First of all, evaluate the financial statements are following the criteria. To evaluate the effectiveness of internal control, to evaluate the possibility of happening fraud within the organization, of occurring fraud within the organizations, and we evaluate the ability of the organization to go in bankruptcy or to go in financial distress. يبقى احنا عشان نوصل للهدف الرئيسي اللي هو انه express an opinion عندنا 4 أهداف. أول هدف منهم إن احنا بنعمل evaluation للفاينانشال statements إنها تم إعدادها أو is preparing according with the specific criteria. وإحنا قلنا عندنا 2 main specific criteria اللي هو generally accepted accounting principles وعندنا ال IFRS. كمان حاجة أنا عايزة أقيس الإفكتفنس أو عايزة أقيس درجة الفعالية والملائمة لنظام الانترنال كنترول سيستم. We are going to discuss internal control system in depth in chapter 3. Okay. كمان عايزين نشوف what is the possibilities that the company have to make fraud or errors in the financial statements. إيه إمكانية إن الشركة تعمل غش وأخطاء في الفاينانشال statements. Also عايزين نشوف هل الشركة expected to go in fraud and to go in financial distress or in bankruptcy in the following year. عايزة أتأكد احتمال إنها ممكن تدخل في غش أو تدخل في تعثر مالي أو تدخل في إفلاس في الفترة القادمة. Okay, this is the main objectives of the audit and the sub-objective of the audit. Now we finished our first lecture about part 1 of chapter 1 of overview of an auditing. In next lecture, we are going to discuss the rest of the chapter, and we are going to start with the management assertions and transaction related audit objective. Thank you.